In 1957, a plant pathologist named Robert Stover stood at the edge of a dying plantation in the Ulua Valley of Honduras. Rows of Gros Michel banana plants, the only banana Americans had ever eaten, stretched toward the mountains, but between them, gaps. Yellowed leaves folded and collapsed. Trunks split lengthwise, exposing brown vascular tissue laced with fungal rot. United Fruit Company had hired Stover 7 years earlier to stop this. His best method, flooding contaminated soil, turned out to spread the fungus faster. He was documenting the death of an industry with tools that were accelerating it. So we pulled the records, pathology reports, company research, government filings. The paper trail on this one runs from 1876 to 2024. None of it was classified. What got us wasn't what we found. It's how long it had been sitting there. The banana you eat today is not the banana your grandparents ate. For nearly a century, the global export trade ran on a single variety called Gros Michel. Big Mike in the trade. Larger, sweeter, creamier. Skin thick enough that whole bunches could be tossed into ship holds without boxing, hauled by hand from jungle railheads to steamers, arriving in New Orleans and New York bruise-free. Picture a drying dock on the Caribbean coast, 1920s. Bare bunches, stacked 5 deep on wooden rail cars, green and heavy, rolling toward the port. No cardboard, no padding, just fruit, tough enough to survive the journey on its own. Big Mike wasn't just a banana, it was the entire supply chain. Ships were sized for it. Ripening rooms were calibrated to it. Every American who peeled a banana between 1880 and 1950 peeled the same clone, because that's what Gros Michel was, a clone. Every commercial plant genetically identical to every other. No seeds, no reproduction, no variation at all. In the 1870s, American entrepreneurs carved the first commercial plantations out of Caribbean and Central American rainforest. Miner C. Keith built railroads through Costa Rica and paid for them with banana concessions. By 1899, his ventures merged into the United Fruit Company, a corporation that would eventually control 650,000 acres in Honduras alone. United Fruit didn't just grow bananas. It ran ports, railroads, telegraph lines, and worker housing. It installed governments and deposed them. O. Henry coined Banana Republic in 1904 to describe Honduras under its influence. By 1929, Honduras shipped a record 29 million bunches, more than Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama combined. Every bunch was the same, every plant was the same clone. The monoculture wasn't a side effect of the business model, it was the business model. The warnings were already on file. In 1876, an Australian researcher named J. Bancroft examined dying banana plants under a microscope, identified a fungal pathogen, and recommended inspecting root cuttings internally before using them to establish new fields. Nobody acted on it. By 1890, the same disease surfaced in Panama and Costa Rica. It earned the name Panama disease. By 1910, roughly 8,000 hectares had been abandoned in each country. United Fruit's response was not to diversify, it was to move. When a plantation went dark, the company abandoned it, raised the infrastructure, pulled up the railroad, and carved a new operation out of virgin jungle somewhere else. Workers lost jobs, towns emptied. Quepos, Costa Rica went from 5,600 banana workers to 700 overnight when the company left. It became the only town in the country to lose population in the second half of the century. Resistant varieties, including a cultivar called the Cavendish, had been identified as early as 1910. United Fruit did not begin switching for another 50 years. The reason was documented. Cavendish bruised easily and required expensive new boxing, handling, and shipping infrastructure. Gros Michel shipped bare. The company chose the cheaper clone until there was no cheap clone left. Between 1950 and 1960, United Fruit's earnings collapsed from $66 million to $2 million. Stock price fell from $70 to $15. The first Panama epidemic cost the industry at least $2.3 billion. The company that coined the phrase Chiquita banana was bleeding out, not from a surprise, but from a fungus it had been running from for 60 years. Stand in the Ulua Valley. Look down a row of infected Gros Michel. The first thing you see is the color. Leaves don't just yellow, they bronze, curl inward, and snap at the stem. The pseudostem, That thick green trunk cracks open from the base. Slice it crosswise, and the inside is threaded with dark brown lines. That's the fungus in the vascular tissue, choking off water the way a clot blocks an artery. Now, look at the soil. Fusarium oxysporum produces spores that survive underground for decades. No fungicide reaches them. Stover's flood fallowing method, pumping water across contaminated fields to drown the pathogen, moved spore-laden sediment into clean areas faster than the fungus could have traveled on its own. The company's irrigation projects, built to buy time, accelerated the collapse. The disease didn't burn through the plantations like a fire. It moved like a tide, slow, invisible in the soil, and irreversible once it reached the roots. In the early 1960s, the industry finally switched. Gros Michel was finished. The Cavendish, a smaller, blander banana, maintained as a specimen in botanical gardens and in United Fruit's own Honduras collection, became the new global standard. A company executive said it was close enough to fool most consumers. New packing plants went up. New ripening protocols were written. Then the industry stopped asking questions. Cavendish was resistant to race 1, so Panama disease was no longer a commercial problem. Research funding dried up. Stover published his monograph in 1962, and it became the last major study for decades. 1967. Cavendish plants in Taiwan began showing the same wilt symptoms. A new strain. The industry did not respond. 1994. The strain was formally identified as Tropical Race 4, TR4. It attacked Cavendish the same way Race 1 attacked Gros Michel, through the roots, up the vascular system. No cure. Published assessments from this period say the same thing. The initial TR4 outbreaks did not awaken the industry. Awareness remained low. There was no Cavendish replacement that met market demands, and nobody was developing one. The file was sitting there. Nobody opened it. 2019, TR4 confirmed in Colombia, the first detection in Latin America. National emergency declared. Initially, 3 farms in La Guajira, then 20 farms across 2 departments. Over 300 hectares eradicated and permanently taken out of production. 2021, Peru. Flood irrigation and heavy rains from Cyclone Yaku drove the pathogen through Piura, the country's most important organic banana region. By 2024, more than 400 small producers were affected. 45% of surveyed farms had the fungus. 10% were completely destroyed. 2023, Venezuela, 3 states. And for the first time, TR4 was confirmed in plantains. Not an export commodity, but a staple food for millions. 24 countries now have TR4, up from 16 in 2018. The fungus persists in soil for over 50 years. There is no chemical treatment. Conventional breeding has not produced a resistant replacement that meets export standards. The Cavendish accounts for 99% of global banana exports, a $34 billion industry on a single clone. Same architecture, same vulnerability, same playbook. For thousands of years, Southeast Asian farmers cultivated hundreds of banana varieties across diverse growing systems. Then the export trade found the banana, asked only which clone could ship the farthest and bruise the least, and planted it, genetically identical, across millions of acres of tropical earth. When the fungus came for Gros Michel, United Fruit abandoned fields, displaced workers, and delayed the switch to a known resistant variety for half a century. When they finally switched, they didn't diversify. They replaced one monoculture with another. Bancroft's 1876 findings were in the file. Stover's data from the 1950s was in the file. The TR4 outbreaks in Taiwan were in the file. Every banana pathologist who published in the last 30 years said the same thing. Nobody changed the system. They just changed the banana. Somewhere right now, there's a crop built on the same architecture. Subscribe to Farmers Archives so you don't miss what we find. Thanks for watching.